Hello, welcome to the Microsoft Cloud Adoption webinar series. Today I'm going to present the fifth part of the five-part webinar series on Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework, which we also call, in short, CAF. This is the last part of this webinar series. We might plan some more webinars, but for the current series, this is the fifth and the last part. In this webinar, we are going to focus mostly that once we are on Azure and we have assets in Azure, how we can better govern them and manage. My name is Vivek Bhatnagar. I'm a CTO and founder of UnifyCloud. My day job is to help customers in migration and modernization of their IT systems and application on Microsoft Azure platform. So let's get started on understanding of governance on Microsoft. Before we jump, let's review the basic objectives and agenda of the session. There are like four objectives of this session. Number one, we would definitely want to understand the cloud governance methodology available for Azure and also prescribed in Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework. And we just want to understand how we can build, and if there is already a something like a governance policy or methodology, then how we can review it. Then we look at cloud management and operation aspect of it, that once we are in cloud, how we manage our resources, how we can manage resource consistency, and how we monitor these resources. Then we also look at or briefly talk about compliances. We are not going to go very deep in compliances, but just to briefly touch base upon cloud compliances. And finally, we are going to talk about some of the tools, templates, and example. Just put the same thing into in form of agenda. We are going to talk about cloud governance model, and this is again based on cloud adoption framework. And what are the Azure services basically support a particular cloud governance model. Then the cloud management model and operation and their supportive Azure services. And finally, how these are aligned with different cloud capabilities, or how we can actually use them to generate some of the documentation that can be given to a customer for their approval for governance and compliances. And finally, look at some of the tools. The main tool here we would like to go through is about cloud governance and benchmarking tool. This is one of the most important tool at this stage of the our discussion, and it is basically continuously improved by Microsoft. So we're going to talk about these things. In case this is the first session you are joining, I just want to spend a couple of minutes on defining like what is Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework. Typically, cloud fundamentally change how enterprise procured, use, and secure technology resources. Traditionally, enterprises assumed ownership and responsibility of all aspects of technology, from infrastructure to software. But by moving to the cloud, enterprise can now have more controls on what they want to use, how much they want to use. It is kind of a change to a service model. So cloud offer a tremendous flexibility in design choices, but it also require that our enterprise need a proven and consistent method for adopting cloud technologies. And Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework fits to that need. It is help guiding decision throughout the cloud adoption. If you want to define it, it is really a one Microsoft approach for cloud adoption in Azure. It consolidate and share the best practices not only from Microsoft employees but also from partners and customers. This framework also give us a set of tools, templates, guidance, narratives, to shape up technology and business and people strategies for driving the business outcomes during our cloud adoption journey. So this is just a base of how we see cloud adoption framework. If we look at little bit details, like how it is having multiple parts. So cloud adoption framework is combination of mainly three parts, so which is planning, readiness, and adoption. So these are the main three areas of cloud adoption guidance and policies and best practices, which is preceded by defining a strategy. So it also lists down a module for strategy, so you can build your cloud strategy, and surrounded by the governance and operation aspect of the cloud. If you today, this is the last session when we're going to talk about govern and manage. We have already spoken the four parts. In case you have not listen to those webinars. You can actually find them on Microsoft website. Uh, just briefly, to summarize what we have learned till today, that how to define a cloud strategy, which is finding an answer of why you are moving to the cloud. And if you can find the correct answer for why, you can actually define a correct migration modernization strategy. If you look at details, you define your motivations, you define what are the business outcomes with that motivations, and where are the business justification to support those motivations. So this is the complete thing. And then finally selecting the first project, which is very important. Once you have a solid cloud strategy, then you can use the same cloud strategy to drive your cloud adoption plan. So you can inventory your existing state, digital state. You can actually align the skills of your company. You can also look at organization alignment. So you can have a cloud implementation and cloud governance bodies, and that all these input will go to form a cloud adoption plan. So now you have a cloud adoption strategy which drive a cloud adoption plan, and this cloud adoption plan drive the next phase of your implementation, which is preparing environment in cloud to host your digital assets like VMs, the databases, networking, and other processes. And that's where you start looking into the best the guidance from Microsoft. How do we build the landing zone? How do we prepare the necessary plumbing to run our all processes in cloud? What are the tools available? Like there is a Microsoft blueprint which will guide you as a best practices to develop the landing zone, and that all cover into the ready zone. Once you are ready to host your digital assets in cloud, then the phase called adopt, and it's typically driven by two distinct approach: migrate and modernize. A migrate approach is simply rehost, which is always very proven fast space, and it's a lot more time. It's one of the best approach in case you want to leave your data center as fast as possible. But in case you have a larger objectives in your mind, and you would like to uh, you would like to achieve substantial business advantages, then look for modernization, like how you can move your application to cloud and in a modern way, and that modern way allow you to use other cloud capabilities to drive a specific business outcomes and business success. So that's called modernization, and we have very long discussion around the migration and modernization. Uh, Finally, we are now going to talk today as governance, like, what is about cloud governance? What are the Azure services which will help you in building this cloud governance? And then finally, how do you operationalize your cloud? How do you manage day to day? What things you need to manage it? And objective today is not to go to each and every service for governance or each and every way you can manage it, but just to objective today in next 60 to 90 minutes is to define the governance framework. So you can actually understand how to build a governance framework, then how to build a management framework, and then what are the Azure services which are supporting it, at least on a, we'll introduce those services without going much detail into this.